Hello, darlings. I hope you don't mind that I'm reading off a laptop today. I had quite a heavy journey here. So, I'd love to begin just with a little small experiment about, what these two images, once they come up, there we are, what these two images, and just think what they, which one do you prefer? So here's this one and that one. The examples labeled A range from high-budget productions to basic home videos, and what they all have in common is that they are from before 2010, before digital cameras advanced to what they are today. The examples labeled B were a series of modern razor-sharp, mercilessly bright pictures filmed on modern digital cameras. The price of the cameras vary, but all are technologically superior to those used on the left. Now here's the curious thing. The photographs on the left felt warmer, more human, more alive. The photos on the right, while technically superior in every measurable way, somehow felt worse. And why is that? What happened between these two images? This is the question that I'd love to explore with you today, because something profoundly strange has occurred in our culture. As cameras have become better and cheaper, our images and perhaps even our lives have become uglier. Once upon a time, filming anything was an event. When home video became commercially viable, a camera was a rare object, heavy, expensive, and mysterious. Taking it out meant that you were intentionally filming something. It meant ceremony. The result was even that home footage felt precious, limited, chosen. As the barrier to entry of taking out a camera decreased, the definition of what warranted capturing changed. Today, every person in this room is carrying a device in their pocket more powerful than an entire 1990s television studio. So naturally, we film everything. We film our breakfasts, our walks to the tube, our reflections in bathroom mirrors, our friends dancing badly, our friends sleeping, our pets waking up, and our pets doing absolutely nothing at all. The extraordinary has been replaced by the constant. And constant things, I'm afraid, quickly lose their magic. This has led to an abundance of pretty awful content. I no longer know what a stable video looks like, and I mean that quite sincerely. Between Snapchat stories, Instagram reels, the relentless chaos of TikTok, my eyes have become so accustomed to jittery, wobbly footage that a steadily, carefully framed shot feels too intentional, like something's gone wrong. The incredible accessibility of camera footage has also, perhaps more tragically, affected professionally shot cinema. Have you noticed something peculiar about the Netflix look? A lot of the content produced by modern streaming services is bright, flat, overly lit, strangely lifeless. Watch almost any original series and you'll see the same aesthetic, enormous washes of white light, perfectly exposed faces, no shadows, no mystery, no texture. It's as if every scene were filmed inside a dentist office. And it's not an accident. It's the aesthetic consequence of a system that has chosen quantity over quality. An unnamed streaming service now releases roughly two entire original series every single day. Not episodes, entire series. That means at any given moment, they may be producing over 1,000 shows simultaneously. And this is not filmmaking. This is manufacturing on an industrial scale. It's not the only or even the worst offender here, as producing shows has become cheaper due to the accessibility of digital film. The whole economic model of the film industry has changed. Instead of a few intentional works reaching for artistic greatness, we now unleash a blizzard of content and hope something sticks. And like any factory, it is optimized for efficiency. In the past, a film set was ruled by scarcity, film stock was expensive, lights were cumbersome, and every shot cost real money. Directors had to think carefully. Cinematographers had to craft images with precision and intention. And today, digital cameras can record for hours at almost no cost. You can shoot endless footage, gather oceans of material, and then sort it out later in the edit. Instead of think, plan, shoot carefully, we now do shoot everything and think later. The result is art without authorship, a Henry Ford assembly line of creativity. Writers are told to make dialogue instantly comprehensible, even somebody half watching and scrolling Instagram. Then they are let go before filming starts. When filming starts, the object is to get maximal content, as this is malleable and possible for editors. They are instructed to keep scenes bright and obvious, so that nobody ever has to lean forward and think at all. Every stage is feeding the next part of the production line. In the earliest days of cinema, films were shot inside of greenhouses, because natural sunlight was the only source of illumination that was reliable. And in later, localized stage lighting allowed filmmakers to sculpt images with darkness, shadow, moodiness. This gave us the visual poetry of film noir, the godfather of worlds rich with mystery and depth. Now, this production line of streaming content means backlighting actors to form that characteristic white halo behind them. This harsh backlight separates them from the background, like stickers on a refrigerator for editors to move around into various scenes. Editors stitch together performances they never witnessed. No single person carries a vision from beginning to end, and this makes interesting choices of lighting and partial view no longer economically viable. What emerges is not a film, it is in fact content. And so we have gone full circle. Modern cameras see in the dark better than the human eye. They capture detail in every corner, and because of this, studios have become lighting everything flatly and evenly, again eliminating shadows so that the footage can be endlessly re-edited, repurposed, brightened for every screen, even if it's the size of your phone. It is not beautiful. Recently, I was watching the trailer of The Devil Wears Prada, and I realized that what this aesthetic reminds me of is early YouTube. The aesthetic of a ring light, evenly lighting a face filmed on a digital camera in a visually pleasing background. Early YouTubers had a practical reason for this aesthetic. They were amateurs. They had no budgets, a ring light, and a cheap camera. As an influencer, I also recognize a motivation for this aesthetic. It's vanity. Harsh, soulless lighting erases wrinkles, it hides blemishes, it turns a human face into a smooth, glowing product. And once again, technology made this possible. And we began to demand it everywhere. Actors, especially older female actors, are blasted with white lights to make it impossible to find any wrinkle. And when we see Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep 20 years on from The Devil Wears Prada, they look exactly the same, if not better. You know, they look better now. And none of this would be possible without the highly sophisticated and cheap digital cameras we have in abundance today. And the problem is that true darkness, and all darkness, is incredibly creatively powerful. Shadows suggest secrecy, ambiguity invites imagination, and imperfection makes images breathe. But ambiguity is risky, and modern media hates risk. It's not profitable. So we film terabytes of perfect footage to chug along the production line, and in doing so, the aesthetic of a social media star and that of a multi-million-pound production unintentionally converge. The other type of media this reminds me of is wedding photography. Wedding photography is less an art form and more in the service industry, with a camera attached. It follows a rigid script: the dress on a hanger, the rings on a pillow, the first kiss, the confetti, the cake. These images are technically flawless, perfectly exposed, beautifully color-corrected, and yet revoltingly hollow. The reason is simple. Wedding photographs are not driven by artistic intention, they are driven by expectation. The photographer is hired to deliver a product, not to express their point of view. Their job is to satisfy parents, venues, traditions, and this is the lack of intention that comes from a production line of filming. And again, it's all enabled by the incredibly low cost of filming. Interestingly, we are already seeing a rebellion against this. Young people are buying old cameras from the early 2000s. They are downloading apps like Prequel and Tezza to make their pristine photos look grainy, blurry, imperfect once again. The most popular filters on social media are not ultra HD, 4K clarity. No, they are vintage film, Polaroid, dust, blur. We are deliberately trying to make our miraculous cameras worse. Why? Well, because we miss texture, we miss limitation, we miss the feeling that an image has soul. But the problem here is more than just too many ugly and faultless Netflix show and pictures of matcha. I think it poses a much more philosophical issue for our interaction with the objects in our lives and the camera. It is our interaction with the culture, family, daily lives, and it's just too accessible. I want you to think about how we experience the world now. A concert is no longer a shared moment of sound, sweat, and electricity. It is a forest of raised iPhones, each person reducing the experience to a shaky vertical rectangle. A sunset is no longer something to sit with. It is something to capture, post, and then ultimately forget. We have turned all meaningful existence into raw footage, and footage by definition is something that waits to be edited later. Filming used to require intention, now it's done by reflex. Our perception has been trained to only notice beauty as the embryonic reflex of which comes the reach for our phone. The accessibility of high-quality digital footage flattens not only our film, but our raw perception. The problem is not how technology has failed. When something becomes effortless, it becomes faultless. And here I think we recognize digital cameras as a small example of one of, if not the fundamental economic problem of our age. For a business to succeed, it can either offer a service that is better or one that is cheaper. And everything is kind of pushing in the direction of better quality and lower prices now. This is in most ways a triumph. Cheaper food, cheaper travel, cheaper communication. These are wonderful, but abundance has an unexpected side effect. Humans focus on limits, and when something has no limiting factor to our pursuit of pleasure, we ignore it. We are entering a post-scarcity world, and we have absolutely no idea how to live in it. If the only way we can value something is by recognizing it as scarce, what happens when scarcity disappears? Do we simply drift, numb, and overfed on infinite options? Or can we invent new forms of meaning that do not rely on rarity? My suggestion, at least in the realm of images, is simple. Downgrade. Film less, choose more carefully what you do film, treat photographs and videos as if they cost something again. And I don't mean storage. And it's not because they literally do, but because they should. When you raise a camera to your eye, imagine you are firing a gun, because by capturing a moment, you are killing something in it. Ask yourself, is this moment truly better captured? Because every time we film something, we slightly step outside of it. We transform lived experience into content, and sometimes that is beautiful. Often it's a theft. And now I realize I'm not the best messenger for this idea. I am, after all, an influencer, a beneficiary of the very democratization of media that I am criticizing. And it may seem absurd for somebody who lives on social media to suggest that social media has gone too far. But, as somebody with very little scarcity in my life, to suggest a post-scarcity society will create a crisis of meaning, in some sense, we may say that the apathy of the socialite classes is a good problem to have. But if this is what we have designed our society to achieve, that is the destruction of scarcity. It makes sense to interrogate the issues that come from the same. And I think this problem is solvable. We cannot rely on scarcity to give life meaning. We must create meaning in other ways. And influencer parties are often marked as the height of vanity, but I disagree. There is something beautiful about gathering with friends with the explicit purpose of creating images and treating photography as an art rather than the reflex. This structure separation of consumption to various settings, again, makes that consumption special, and it creates the benefits of scarcity. A lot of us already have this attitude towards drinking. We have access to alcohol, but to avoid collapse into alcoholism, we limit ourselves to drinking only on weekdays or with other people, or even just not in the morning, depending on who you are. Applied to photography, this means having events where everyone makes the conscious decision not to film, and then having different events with a conscious decision to film. This adds intentionality and therefore beauty to both. This is the difference between living for the camera and collaborating with it. Perhaps the solution is not to destroy limits, but to choose them intentionally, to impose constraints that force creativity. And I don't know if this approach can be solved similarly, God, I'm having a day, in other domains, but we must begin developing heuristics of how to value things when they become free. Technology will continue to improve, cameras will become sharper, screens brighter, storage limitless, The economic machine will go on making things cheaper and better, and that is inevitable. What's not inevitable is how we respond to this. We can allow abundance to flatten our art and to thin our lives, or we can rediscover the courage to be selective, intentional, and a little imperfect. The problem is not that we have too little, it's that we have too much. And sometimes, to live beautifully, one must learn to choose less. Thank you.